What's up, everybody? I'm Brian Fitzy, and this is Building Blocks. This is the new show that I'm going to be doing live every single Wednesday at 12 noon. And I figured for the first episode here, I would dig into something that is at the core of my performance as a solo musician. When I'm not performing with a band, I use a technology called live looping, and that's something that I'm totally going to get into in future episodes. But for today, I figured I would go into what the percussive backbone of my music is, and most of the time it's not using percussion pads or anything to get sounds like, which I'm playing off camera on an MPC. Most of the time I'm using my mouth. I'm doing beatboxing. Beatboxing is essentially, if you are not totally familiar with what it is and how it came about, it's a method of recreating drum sounds from a drum machine like that live in the moment. So with just your mouth. And it's essentially, you can only really make a handful of different sounds at a time as a core. So much of it is like taking taking a beat and breaking it up into little tiny slices and then reassembling all those slices live with your mouth. So, for example, there could be a groove that's like, now, there's very few sounds that I'm making there. So what I'm going to show you guys is how to create those sounds yourselves, and then you can experiment and build your own beatbox grooves from that. So there's a few different sounds. There's the kick drum. There's the snare drum, which you can make a ton of different sounds. I can do or. So you can substitute whatever you want in there snare-wise. And then you've got your hi-hats, your cymbals. So that's most of the time going to be the. So those different sounds, those are all like phonetic shapes, right? So for the kick drum sound, you're going to basically make a PF kind of sound. You're going to really want to push a lot of air out very quickly. The best thing I can think of as an example is if somebody says something to you and you're like, most of the beatbox sounds actually pretty much start from that kind of response and that just kind of exhalation of air. So to create that sound, you really want to get tight. What happens when you do it into a microphone is I'll do it a little bit off axis on this microphone here. When I do it off axis, you won't get so much of the brute force into the mic. So, but as soon as I turn to the mic, you can hear a lot more movement there. What's actually happening is the way a microphone works, it's taking sound pressure, it's taking vibration, it's taking energy, and it's converting it into an electrical signal, which goes out on the wire here. So when I'm doing beatboxing, if I have the opportunity to do it into a microphone, I want to do that. There are some people in the a cappella world that are going to do stuff with certain mic etiquette and having the mic off. I come from the hip hop, the birthplace of beatboxing, that school of thought. So I want to be right up on the microphone, and I'm actually going to cup the microphone too, so I don't let any air get out, and all that air is going to get focused right into the center of the capsule. So when I'm doing that, you can hear the difference. Just it's instantaneous. So this microphone right now is set up actually in my live streaming space, and we're a lot tighter than I normally am for my live stream shows. Normally I've got a camera way over there, and you're getting a lot more of the vision, a lot more stuff in your field of vision. This microphone I primarily sing into, but I have this other microphone on here that I do to layer beatboxing and vocals and all sorts of other stuff. Anything that I can't have plugged directly into my gear, and you guys will eventually see my gear in future episodes. This mic is totally set up differently than this one. This one's going to not have a whole lot of the bottom there. So when I do a kick drum sound, it doesn't have a whole lot of definition there. If you're listening with headphones right now, you're going to be able to tell the difference between and pretty significant. So we've got two different microphones here. if you just have a microphone plugged into a PA system and it's set the way it would normally be, just everything down the middle to start, or you plug it into an amplifier or whatever, you're going to be able to change that sound and change the contour. So if I don't have that low information coming out of this microphone, you're just not going to have that definition. But you can still have a little bit of punch there. There's no doubt that there's still some, right? Okay, so there's your kick drum sound, and maybe a little bit too much of the why behind what you hear, but you're going to get that a fair amount with me here. So we got the kick drum sound. Two other sounds that I'm going to talk about in the toolkit is going to be your snare sound. You can make that as a K sound that's really going to start in the back of your throat. That's my least favorite snare drum sound because it puts a lot of strain on my vocal cords, and as a vocalist, not exactly something I want to be doing. But there are times when I'll have that, or that one's a little bit easier, but it's pretty close to the hi-hat sound. So I like to have some variance there so I can deviate dramatically in those sounds. So things don't get covered up. When my snare hits, I want it to cut. I want it to really, really, really make it through. So we got that sound. We've got, which is more of a side stick. You can do my favorite snare sound, which I've been making since I was like 5, and that's just, or that's a really pursed lips thing. So you really want to tighten your lips up, almost like a snare drum head. And you're going to expel a fair amount of spit when you're doing this too. So another benefit of doing the cup on the microphone is that you're not spitting all over the place. When I teach beatboxing workshops and stuff, there's always like a big thing of paper towels and a big thing like disinfecting wipes, because if you're passing a microphone around like that, it's going to be pretty nasty. So preferably use your own microphone and keep it that way. So that's the snare sound that I've been making for a long time. When you do it into a microphone, it gets a lot of the high-end information there, and it really snaps. I think it sounds a lot like if you put a microphone on the bottom of a snare drum. That's where the actual snare is. You get a lot more of the crack there than you do when you put the microphone on the top. Another thing we're going to be doing a whole bunch on Wednesdays here is the stuff in the studio, where I'm going to show you guys how to get different recording quality out of very small amounts of equipment, be able to get a great product, and ways that you can approach making music, and hopefully save you some time and have you avoid making some of the mistakes and having to learn through failure as often as I did when I was coming up. So snare drums, that's one of them. And then the last one is kind of like an 808. There's a little bit of a static quality there. So when I'm doing that one, again, I'm going to exhale a bunch of air, but instead of being like the kick drum, I'm going to do, that one's way more of a PF, whereas the bass drum's a little bit more of a BF, right? So now the way assembling those sounds, we've got one more sound, hi-hat. I like that to basically be like TS or ST. That's kind of the shape phonetically there. And if you stretch it, you're going to push your lips, kind of leave them a little space. You're going to show your teeth. You're going to push your tongue to the back side of your teeth. If you just get a hiss kind of sound, and then you can shorten that. You just don't make the sound as long. Now you can vary that by going, and now we have all this different texture. And if you don't do all of them at the exact same amount of intensity, now we've got some pulse. Now we've got some space and some push-pull in there. If everything was just all the same volume, that would be like your very first starting point programming a drum beat on an MPC or some kind of drum sequencing software. And sometimes that's exactly what you want. You might want a beatbox sound or a drum sound that's like, that might be exactly what you want. In that case, do that. But if you have a slight amount of variance there, then it really, really, really swells. It pulls the audience in as a listener. The more things that you can do to subtly change what you're doing, you're just going to keep the engagement going. And the core thing that beatboxing came out of was being the backbone in a cipher when you'd have a group of MCs just trading bars, either freestyling or spitting written stuff. And you needed to have something there to enable to have, basically, the beatboxer is the canvas and the MC is the paint, right? So if they don't have that canvas, there's nothing to paint on. And spoken word totally works, but coming up out of the hip-hop era, the beginning of the roots of hip-hop there, I mean, the drum machine was the core, was the centerpiece there. So that's like, the beatbox is such a crucial instrument there. I use it as part of a textural thing. So like when I'm building a groove, I will do beatboxing or some other kind of percussive thing as the beginning, as the basis, and then I build a whole composition on top of it. So let's get back. With the beatboxing, we're going to have those three sounds, right? Kick, snare, or and then hi-hat or cymbals. Those sounds all work. What you're going to do is you're going to figure out what the beat that you're trying to make is first. Why don't we do a basic one? And then it's a matter of slicing up the beat into subdivisions. So those of you that are learning music theory, when we're talking about common time, which is 4/4, there's 4 beats to a bar, and the quarter note gets the beat. Because if you divide something by 4, you get quarters, right? All right, so we're going to be able to divvy this into 16ths or 30 seconds or eighths or whatever you want. And in every single one of those slices, you need to fill that with something. It can be filled with silence, or it can be filled with the continuation of a sound that originated a slice prior or several slices prior, right? So that note is just longer. You can do stuff where you've got the subdivisions being just a little bit off. So instead of it being totally just like, it's a little bit of a shuffle there, so that beat isn't falling quite there right on the grid. So we're going to do a basic beat. So what I want you to do is we're just going to do 4 counts. So we're going to do, everything's going to be on the quarter. So it'll be kick on 1 and 3, and snare on 2 and 4. 2 and 4 is called the backbeat. So now what we can do is, in between that kick and snare, we can do a hi-hat. So now we're going to, instead of just having division of 4, right? Instead of having quarter notes, we're going to have eighth notes. So now we could treat that as 4, and now all of a sudden the tempo is twice as fast. But if we're going to be consistent here on speed, those are eighth notes happening there. So we can do even more than that. We could do where we have a little bit of a pickup note. So again, it's all about laying in one, coming up with the tempo, coming up with the groove that you want, and then trying to find ways to divide certain parts of that grid that you just created with the beatbox to stuff more stuff in. There's sounds that you can make simultaneously. You can hum while you beatbox. Do that into the mic. And then go from there. So I'll show you real quick, just laying down a beatbox groove, and then I'm going to pull the camera down and I'm going to put a bass line in, and I'm going to fade things out, and I'll see you next Wednesday back here, 12 o'clock. Have a great week. Live looped. I'll do another loop of just some vocal stuff. All right.